I'm here with Loumi, and in this video, this is Loumi's roadmap to success. Now, Loumi is a resource guarder, so you'd think that holding a bully stick, this is actually a collagen stick from our friends over at Best Bully, and I guess I forget their companion company, but basically I'm holding it, and he's chewing it, so it's ours. If he's holding it and I try to take away from him, that would be his, and that's often what resource guarding comes from. So, all right, so basically what we're going to do is, we're just going to summarize everything we went over. The first thing we did is we went over a marker word. His marker word is yes, and we did a loading exercise. By the time the Guardians watch this video, hopefully they've already done this. I explained I wanted them to do this once or twice each today, and once or twice each tomorrow. So it's just saying yes and give him a treat, and walk to the next room, say yes, give him a treat. Same thing with the clicker. Also the clicker, make sure you don't hold the clicker next to his head. Sometimes it startles some dogs. We don't want it to be the case. So a clicker, or the marker word, is just an indicator to let the dog know that it did the thing that we wanted. So if I'm teaching him to sit, as soon as his butt hits the ground, I say yes, and I release that treat. And so after we went over loading that, we went over using hand targeting. And this is a vehicle that I use to teach people how to use the marker word with good timing and how to introduce cues. And this is basically the chopping motion that I do, and he touches his nose to my hand. Normally I would not have a treat, so I chop my hand, he touches his nose to it, and then I put the treat on the hand, and he licks it up there. So as soon as he touches his nose to the treat, to my hand, I would say yes. Then I put the treat on his hand. And I have a video for that if you forget how to do that one. We do that one so we can reposition him. He's a little guy, and his Guardians, I think, have manipulated him physically at times where he didn't like that. And I think that might be related to some of the snarling and things along those lines. So to help with that, we went over cutoff signals, things to look for. So cutoff signals for dogs includes lowering their head, turning away, rotating their ears back, freezing, licking their lips, staring at you with hard eyes. You see his eyes now. I can't really see him now, but usually dogs, when they're feeling comfortable, they have what we call sleepy eyes. They're kind of squinted. If they're large and unblinking, that's a big warning. So also going from an open mouth to a closed mouth, going from relaxed to stiff, breathing heavy. These can be signs of anxiety. But cutoff signals also could include refusing to come to you. It could include freezing, which we often misinterpret as consent, but he's really just frozen in fear, and then we pick him up anyways. That doesn't mean just because he's allowing us to do it that he likes us doing it. He could also roll over and show us his belly, and that's kind of that's being submissive. And then, of course, he could bare his teeth, he could snarl, he could snap at us, and he could bite us. Those are also pretty obvious cutoff signals. So what I recommend the Guardians do is we not reach to pet him on top of his head to start. Instead, we try to pet him under his chest, on his chin, or on his shoulders. And so this oval area is the best place to initiate contact with him. Now, if I start petting him here, I can work my way up to his head, and he's probably going to be fine with that. But if he gets stiff, he's saying I'm uncomfortable, then we need to stop. So if we listen to the dog when the dog communicates that I'm uncomfortable about something, then he doesn't have to take it to a snarl or to a bark or to a lunge or to a bite, because he's just communicating. So I always tell people that they should interpret a snarl or a growl as a dog's way of saying, I feel uncomfortable or I disagree. So if I communicate to my partner that I feel uncomfortable and my partner says, shut up, it's not going to help me feel secure. It's probably going to make my feelings worse. And so with dogs, whenever he growls or bares his teeth, what we should do instead is increase the distance between him and whatever it is. Okay, we also went over the two core concepts that I go over with everyone. The first one is what I call teaching dogs manners, and doing it through the concept of a do-over. So he likes to jump up on his humans to ask for attention, and when he does, his humans pet him. Is it wrong to pet your dog? Of course not. But anything your dog was doing before you pet it is what you were specifically rewarding them for. So if he jumps up on my shins and I pet him, I'm telling him that's how I want you to ask for attention. And so instead, when he jumps up, I'm going to freeze, and I'm going to tell him to sit one time. He has 2 seconds to sit. If he sits, then I'm going to say yes, I'm going to pet him under his chin. If he doesn't sit, then I'm going to just disengage. I'm not saying no, there's no punishment, there's no correction. He just doesn't get what he wants. After a while, he'll start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for the attention. When he does, you say your mark word and pet him under his chin or on his chest like we talked about earlier. My hand is getting a little crampy. Let me hold it over here. How about if we go this way? Whoop. That's a little bit of the resource guarding, and that's okay. So now I'm still holding it, but I have a less crampy hand now. And so he had a resource, and he's kind of worried that somebody's going to try to take it from him. But right now I'm using the concept of ours. I'm holding on to it, he's chewing it, so he's not in possession of it, so he's not becoming possessive of it. If I let it go, that would be the different dynamic. Now, I'm not saying you should grab things. Once he's in possession of it, you try to grab him, he's going to bite you. But right now, because we've started off this way, this is a very different distinction. So we went over basically manners. So if he jumps up on us, I tell him to sit. If he sits, then I pet him, say my word and pet him. If he doesn't sit, then I just disengage and watch TV or do something else. There's no engagement with him, no reward. After a while, he'll start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for that attention. When he does, make sure you recognize and reward that. Now, we also went over the concept of celebrating. Celebrating is the flip side of that coin. Celebrating is rewarding him when he does things that we want without us asking him to do so. So if he comes up to me, I'm going to say yes and pet him. If he sits, I'm going to say yes and pet him. Lays down, yes, drops something. Goes to his dog bed, poops, whatever it is, we're going to say yes at the conclusion of the act and then pet him. But I'm not asking him to do any of these things. So after a while, he's going to recognize, so if I ask him, one of the questions I ask my clients is, what could you do to make your guardians happy or to contribute to the group that you live with? Most people can't. They tell me a list of things they don't want their dog to do. Stop biting people, stop snarling, stop whatever it is. Well, that's not doing something. I want him to know what he can do. Can you chew a piece of it off?
Send another treat.
Okay, yeah, well, you can come back up here and get this if you want, buddy. And so celebrating is just rewarding him when he chooses to do it. So there's no back and forth. There's no power dynamic. When he does things I like, I showcase. I say yes and I pet him. That makes him more likely yes. Now right there, that's a little bit, he had the resource. And so it's a little bit different. So now that's a little bit because I'm touching his paw, but I don't want to move my hand because what's the dog's doing this? This is not something I would normally recommend. I just want to have him in the shot, and I'm confident what I'm doing. I would not recommend you guys doing this. Okay, so celebrating is just saying that to each other, celebrate, and then they start to say yes and pet the dog, independent of any resource guarding, of course. Yes. Now right there, see how he's, yep. And at this point, I think he's a little bit tired because this is a longer session. And so I'll just go ahead and I'm going to remove the resource. And the nice thing about resource guarding is once the resource is removed, the dog usually returns to a calm state. You see, he's not targeting, he's not stiff. He's, his body language is normal, but there's still some residual. If I pet him, that could result in it. So I'm just going to give him some space. He's tired and cranky. That's okay. I get a little the same way when I'm tired and cranky. Okay, so, and this is also a chair that has a lot of treats in it that he has a tendency to claim. His guardians don't sit in this chair for that reason, so right there. So now if I move around a lot when he's doing that, that could also cause him. And this is what we talked about in the video above, a resource guardian. Sometimes he'll come and snuggle next to his guardian, and then he starts guarding, and she's like, what am I supposed to do? So that's the case, just get up and leave and walk away like I talked about in the video above. Okay, so see, he's fine. He's walking around, he's looking and exploring the bag that scared him now, he's checking out, and he's looking for something else to get into. So that was, I'm not saying that was all bark and no bite, because there would have been a bite had I protested, but I'm keeping cool head. So again, when your dog is doing these things, try not to get hyperbolic and like freak out, because that's like throwing gasoline on a fire. Instead, you just be quiet and measured and take the appropriate action. So the two techniques I just got done talking about is manners and celebrating. I use watchwords to help us remember. So if manners, like if he's jumping up at me and I'm petting him, somebody comes in and says manners, I would stop petting him, tell him to sit one time. If he sits, I would say yes and pet him on his chin. And I would tell my partner or my friend, thank you for reminding me. I forgot that I shouldn't be petting him when he jumps up because I don't want to encourage that behavior. Celebrate is if I miss something. So if he runs up to me and I miss it, my partner would say, celebrate, reach down and pet him. Yes, as long as he's not resource guarding, because he came to me. So these are just gentle ways for you to help remind each other, please do so. If you get in a habit, if you take nothing away from this session other than teaching manners and celebrating, you're going to have a pretty well-behaved dog that understands good dynamics. Now, we also went over a little bit of exercise. The guardians here do a good job, but he likes to play fetch. And there's an exercise that we can use to help him with his resource guarding. So when he had an object, when he brought it over to us, when he's not guarding it, he's bringing it to us. So we kind of have his consent. We hold the treat out to his nose. I'm not saying anything. I'm waiting. When he dropped it, I said yes, and I put the treat in his mouth, and I didn't pick the object up. I did that a couple times. And after a while, then he brought it back, and I held the thing out, and I said drop as I held it out, because I knew he was going to drop. He had done it multiple times. So I shouldn't say the cue unless I'm 90% certain when I say the cue, the dog's going to do the action. So I said drop. He dropped it. I said yes and put the treat in his mouth. And after doing that a couple times, then when he dropped it, then I picked the object up, I asked him to sit. He didn't sit right away, so I just waited. As soon as he sat, I said yes to let him know I like you sitting. Then the reward is I threw the object. And his guardian at one point wanted to give him a treat, which you could do, but for dogs, a lot of dogs like grabbing objects. So he's just grabbed a little banana. So every time he has a toy, I want you to pull out a treat and just quietly go up to his nose and hold it there until when you do that, he drops it right away. Then you would hold his nose and say drop at the same time. He drops it, you say yes, put the object in his mouth. This way, when you're on a walk, if he does pick up a cigarette butt, or there's something nasty that he wants to pick up and explore, you can say drop, he spits it out, looks at you, and you give him a treat, and you maybe give him the treat over here. So he drops it over here, you hold the treat, he comes over here and gets a treat, then you can take the object away, or you just remove him from the area. Now, if I do need to take something away from him, let's say that he has some underwear or a sock or a shoe or something, if I physically take it away from him, I'm bigger than he is, I could do it if I wanted to, but he might bite me, and it's going to cause him to think that David's a thief. He's going to try to steal my stuff in the future. So what I do instead is I use the same dropping mechanic, and so I get him to drop, he takes the first one, then I throw in one about a foot or two away, so he turns his back to whatever the object is that I want to take away from him. When his back is turned away, I pick up the object, then I take a bully stick or a collagen stick from our friends over at Best Bully and put it down on the ground, or Barkworthy's. You can get Barkworthy's at the store. It's the same company, Barkworthy's is where you buy it. And then so now when he turns around, the cigarette butt is gone, or the underwear is gone, but there's a bully stick there. And so he doesn't feel like he's losing out. Actually, this is better than the underwear. I'm going to sit down and chew on it. So he doesn't feel like he's losing out in that equation. I went over in the video above, leave it as well as drop it. I have separate videos for those, so if you want those, let me know, and I'm happy to go ahead and give you. Right there, you can celebrate. Yes, and pet him.
Yes.
Yes.
There you go. Perfect. Now, after a while, he's going to be like, man, they like it when I come, when I sit, when I give them eye contact. We went out on a little mini walk in the area. And so every time he looked at it, the guardian had a treat in his mouth. He looked at it, yes, and held out that treat. Well, when we first started the walk, it was like we didn't exist to him. But by the end of the walk, he was like checking in with us because we're giving him treats every time he does. That's the foundation of loose leash walking. So make sure you're working on that. And when he has low value items, pull out one of those treats and get it and mark it and eventually say drop. Eventually he gets to the point where he grabs something, you say drop, he spits it out and he's looking for a treat. And then you can go over, grab a treat and go give it to him. And now you've created a better vocabulary. He understands what's going on. Let me see. We also went over stay. We went over stay for distractions, which is how I teach it. And if I don't have it linked above on this write-up, let me know and I can include a link to the stay and you can watch that lesson and work on that. Now be careful for stay. Well, I guess for stay is fine. It's a good impulse control exercise, but don't get greedy. When you're doing stay, as I say in the video, the most important thing is you have 100% stay. You don't want him to get up in the middle of it. That's why we want to go slow and short. At first it's stay, one distraction, treat. If I say stay and go to 15 distractions, he's going to get up and walk away. He's like, David looks like he's dancing, whatever, I'm going to walk away. Well, then he's doing the opposite of a stay. So for stay, we need 100% compliance. That's why we go very slow and methodically. And also at some point, you want to start breaking eye contact. So if the camera's the dog, I would say stay, one distraction, two distraction, now I'm breaking eye contact, 3, 4, yes, treat. Otherwise, if you stare at them the whole time, when you actually start incorporating distance and you leave the room, as soon as the eye contact breaks, they think we're done and they walk away. Hey, buddy. Let me see. We also talked about feeding him out of like a snuffle mat, which is a nice way to burn a little energy for him. Yeah, you want to come back up here? Yeah. And they understand with resource guarding that they kind of did something odd a lot of times. And so sometimes they'll feel a little sheepish or a little bit afterwards, but it's just really important that we just don't reinforce it by, again, taking stuff away or physically taking things away from them. We also went over shaping, to teach them to lay down. Shaping is the concept of rewarding a small portion of the overall activity. So what I do is I touch his nose and lips, and whenever I'm training, I try to imagine there's an imaginary rubber band attached to the lips. So I try to lure him down, and he doesn't come, the rubber band pulls the treat back, wherever you go. You want to keep the treat within an inch of his nose. And basically, I just lured him, and when he lowered his head as low as he would, I said yes and released the treat. I did that 3 times. Then the 4th time, I lowered his head, and his head came down, and then he put his foot forward. And then I said yes and released it for that. Next time, he put them both together. After that, he was starting to lay down. So we didn't introduce the cue until it was easy to lure him down. Once it's easy to lure him down, then he would say, crash. touch the treat to his lips, and then lure him down to that sitting down position, then say yes and release the treat. And so after a while, that's how we do it. So don't say the cue unless you're 90% certain when you say the cue, he's going to do the action. And I don't know why, but I keep on blanking on your name now. That
Loumi.
Loumi, that's right. And so make sure, keep in mind that whatever we're doing, we're kind of training Loumi. So, am I engaging with him in a way that I like or in a way that I don't like? And so we want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that is positive, that's going to be beneficial for us. Yeah. You want to come up here? Come here, buddy. Come on. It's like, no, I want you to put it in my mouth. I'm used to being catered to. Come on. Puppy, puppy. Loumi, you don't want to come up here? I want to sign off this video. You're going to stare at me and you're going to try to use the Jedi mind trick? There we go. Oh, I thought that was going to be you were coming up here. He's just stretching. There we go. All right. Well, now I'd like you guys to watch the video above on the resource guarding. And again, this is being overly tired. And so I wanted to have him at the end of the shot. But so watch the video on resource guarding. Watch this video until when you watch it once a week until you watch this video. There's nothing new here. If he's still resource guarding, you're still having problems, let me know. I'm happy to come back. But I want you guys to utilize all the stuff that we went over in this session first before spending more money. Yes, and I pet you, but I think that you're not going to like that because you're going to be in a resource guarding mode. Well, this is my buddy Loumi, and this is Lumi's roadmap to success. That's probably not the right time to say that. But there we go. This is Lumi's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.